function pointers not running run directives, or are we ignoring that for now? We are ignoring that for now, and we're making a note that that problem needs to be solved. You don't, so here's the thing. In a big project, you just don't have to solve every problem at once. In fact, if you try, you will not get very far at all. You'll just get crushed under the load of all the things you have to do and of never getting anything done. So my personal programming style, over the years, I found a way that works for me of having a forward-moving wavefront of which problems we're attacking seriously right now versus which problems we're just doing something that kind of sucks, but it's good enough for now, right? And that's okay as long as you go back to the things that kind of suck and do a better job on them later. Now, the reason why it's a good idea to do that, well, first of all, if you never get enough done to have a running program that does the general thing you want to do, then, well, let me put it the other way around. If you get a rough draft of your program together, you can use that to figure out how you really want it to behave. Some of your ideas about what you wanted to build in the beginning might not have been very good ideas, and you can refine those ideas by having something approximating the thing that you were building, right? And so the closer you, the faster you get to that approximation, the better. That's something that actually web people understand, because Paul Graham's been saying it for a long time. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is that the more time you spend working in that space of your approximation to the thing that you want, the more time you spend becoming an expert in the field of this specific application that you're making, the better you get at that subfield of programming. And the better you get at that subfield, the better your decision making about technical issues in that field is going to be. So if you make hard decisions later, they will be made better, both by a more skilled person and with more contextual information than if you make those hard decisions early on, okay? So deferring these kind of decisions is actually important for good craftsmanship in some cases. It sounds paradoxical, because you would think good craftsmanship is just you see a problem and you like relentlessly solve it whenever you see one, but I don't find it to work that way. With things like this where I don't know the answer, you don't want to ignore the problem. This has to get fixed before ship, but the right way to fix it, I don't necessarily know right now. And there's plenty of other problems that are easier that will actually have more impact on usability. So we could go into closed beta with this. We could go into open beta with this. It's really fine until a certain point when it's not fine. I think there's a pretty serious problem that started happening in programming culture. I mean, it's been in programming for as long as I've been in, and this is beyond games even. This is everywhere. Yeah. People don't have a clear picture of what knowledge is deep versus what knowledge is shallow, right? So if you go to school and you're a good student and you learn the difference between n log n and n squared, right? That's deep knowledge that will apply in many cases, and it's something fundamental about computers, right? On the other hand, if you go on Hacker News and read an article about somebody learning a specific JavaScript API and tutorializing it, right? That's very shallow knowledge, because it's just, you're learning about arbitrary decisions that somebody made about how to interface with a thing that you're not even trying to understand, right? But that knowledge became very popular since, let's say, since 2005, once this second boom of programming happened and everybody realized, oh, you can make a lot of money in popular since, let's say, since 2005, once this second boom of programming happened and everybody realized, oh, you can make a lot of money in programming or whatever, all these people showed up and they just want the job where they could do JavaScript, and so they just learn the API, right? And so there's been a deluge of shallow knowledge. It's a little bit more complicated than that, because part of the way that you learn deep knowledge is by looking at shallow things and reading the pattern underneath. Like, if there's an API to do something, if it's a good API, then by looking at the API choices, you can understand the problem and the even if you can't see the code. It's better if you could see the code inside. But if you can't, you can still see some things about the mechanics. And you know, one example of that is a graphics API. It's like, okay, they want me to like put the vertex data into a buffer and like lock the buffer and then not touch it. Why is that? Oh, it's going to the GPU and all this stuff, right? You can figure this out. On the other hand, if it's a bad API, which most APIs are, it'll be full of stuff that's stupid. And or even cargo culting, where they're copying a good API. So my favorite example of this was when Microsoft did Direct 2D, which was taking Direct 3D, which was successful, and then trying to add font rendering and all that to that. They made an ARGB color, right? So red, green, blue, and alpha, a lockable resource. So to create one of these, you had to like lock it and fill the color data and unlock it. And I'm like, you have no idea what you're doing. And I actually told Microsoft this, and they didn't. They did not like my opinion on that. But they were just copying, oh, Direct 3D has you lock things and fill them, and so let's do that here. And it was completely absurd. So, how to fix it? There just isn't much of an idea right now of what an actual respectable engineer is, you know? Like, if you think back to like civil engineering, like people who build bridges or whatever, you think of people who are responsible and know things well and make sure they're right because it's important to be right. We don't really have that in software at all. It's completely dead as far as I can tell. And part of the reason it's dead is because nobody can tell what's right, because it's just a bunch of people arguing in a loud room and like no real information gets through. And if anybody has an idea how to solve that, I would love to hear that idea. I don't know. The only way that I know to solve it is to just do better in an obvious way. But even that maybe doesn't win, right? Because all these JavaScript frameworks are still popular, even though they're all the same as each other, right?
You have NPMs to pad things because no one wants to write code anymore.
And in the same way the market can remain irrational longer than you could remain solvent, I think software industry culture could remain stupid longer than you're alive. Like, that's just possible. So I'm doing what I can do, but I'm very conscious that I have a limited ability to affect this giant thing.
What about the problem with function?
Thank you for excellent movies. And I'm a freelance game programmer. And in this movie, you were inspired from Super Mario and Metroid and Rockman. I am so proud of it, and as a Japanese. And my question is, what could you tell me what kind of about recently Japanese? What do you think about the recently Japanese game?
Is it what is about Japanese games that inspired us?
Recent.
Oh,
recent.
recent
I'm
Japanese
sorry.
They suck. I'm sorry. Like, you guys need to get with the times and make better interfaces and like update your technology. We're totally kicking your ass. Back then, you guys were the king of the world, but your time has passed. I'm so sorry.
Did you look at his face? Look at what you did, Phil.
I have a more specific game design comment that is
So hateful. Swoop in and be constructive.
No, this is well, I mean, I don't like Japanese games either. The thing that I don't like about them, all the modern ones that I've played, except, you know, like Dark Souls and Demon Souls and stuff, is you sit down and the game treats you like an idiot, right? Like you have to click through like 700 little boxes telling you how to do everything. There's this idea, so Western game designers, and I'm only familiar with the game design dialogue in the West, but old school games like adventure games had all this random stuff where you had to read the designer's mind, right? And at some point we understood, oh, things have to kind of make sense for the player to expect to get through them, right? So we have to train people on our game mechanics, and then the rest of the game can be expanded out from that initial training, right? I feel like Japanese games take that too far, and Japanese games feel like it's illegal to ever let the player do anything that has not explicitly been shown to the player in painstaking detail earlier in the game. And what that does is it kills the joy of discovery. And that's the thing that I really value about games, is when you figure something out that you haven't been shown, right? And when you show the player everything, you're turning it into an exercise, and it's an exercise that's kind of insulting, because of course I can follow the exercise, you told me what to do, right? And then they make me click through so much bad dialogue. I mean, Western game dialogue is terrible also, but at least we hit spacebar and we can like skip the whole cutscene or whatever. But when they come in and make you hit A, yeah. Okay, cutting it off there. But a more
nice
politic way of
translation.
saying what Phil was saying.
I mean, I think everybody would like to go back to games that you just pop in and you start playing and it's an adventure, like how, I mean, that's all of my childhood memories.
I think that Zelda games should just start with a prompt that says, "Have you played a Zelda game since 1996?"
Yeah.
And then you can skip the first 45 minutes to 2 or 3 hours.
Now, of course, before this goes up on blogs and stuff, right? There are exceptions, right? There are Japanese games that are different from that. But the trend, you know, just like the trend in America is like, you know, soldier looking down a gun sight, you know, shooting dudes. It's the same feeling.
Street Fighter 4.
Yeah, Street Fighter 4 is pretty good. Yeah, but I think the Zelda comparison is really good. If you look at the first Zelda and the latest Zelda, the first Zelda it just drops you into that world, and it's a completely open, non-linear world, and it's dangerous and it's hard, and you have to like learn from your mistakes and figure things out. And there are these secrets, and the secrets are not obvious at all, which makes them secret and interesting. And then you play the latest Zelda, and it's the most like, it's just a straight corridor. It's just holding your hand the whole time. All the secrets have like an arrow pointing at them. It's just like, you can break this wall with a bomb because there's a little crack, and there's like, all the surprise and magic and like danger and mystery is just gone completely because of this obsession with like tutorials and making sure that the player knows about everything. Like it kills it for me.
But what's awesome about that is it's really easy to convince yourself that that's good game design, right? Like, of course we have to put an indication.
You have to clearly communicate things to the player.
It's like you have to communicate affordances, right? So therefore, all the blow-upable walls have cracks on them, right? And it's just, being logical about game design is too easy to take too far, and then you have nothing. You have a joyless husk, right?
A joyless husk.
Yeah, let's just leave it a joyless husk.
If you start a career at a company that gives you mediocre things to do, you're going to turn yourself into a mediocre web programmer. That's just what happens, okay? You need to go outside that. It's not always, people don't always want to act on that device, on that kind of advice, because it sounds very like a big step where people are not sure what to do and they've got a job and why, whatever, but that's you know, I mean, most programmers are mediocre, let's face it. And how does that happen? Well, they don't try that hard to improve. So get yourself out of that path early, and you'll be good. How do you level up as a programmer who's been primarily working with web frameworks? Stop doing web programming. Web programming is bad. It will make you a bad programmer. How do you level up as a programmer who's been primarily working with web? Frameworks. Stop doing web programming. Web programming is bad. It will make you a bad programmer. Stop it. Work on other things in other domains. That is step number one. It's like saying, how do I become a better athlete, when what I do is I sit around with all the guys on the couch with the bags of Cheetos, and we practice throwing the Cheetos into each other's bowl, which is kind of like playing basketball. And it's like, no, Swift is fast. Oh, just search for, let's do an experiment. Let's open Google and just put a neutral phrase into Google, like Swift language compile times. We're not saying they're bad or good. Improve your Xcode Swift compile time. 8 tips to speed up your Swift build and compile times. Why is Swift compile time so slow? How to cut Swift compile times in half. How to make Swift compile faster. Long compile time in Swift could be the literal parsing bug. Swift slow compile times fix. Speed up Swift compile time.
Something which I also find really interesting. If you think about your past couple of years, I mean, is there anything what you would do differently? Or let me rephrase this question. What would you give yourself as an advice to the younger Jonathan, like 5 years from now, before now, or maybe to the really young Jonathan?
I don't know. This is weird because it's probably not very hard to change who you ended up being. And then, like, I had a pretty hard time in some ways when I was young. So it's tempting to go help that little kid out with some things, but that's why I am who I am today. And you know what? So you have to appreciate it and respect it, because otherwise you wouldn't be you, right? So if I focus that question a little bit more and make it be about video games and stuff, I definitely could have helped myself with, when I started my first game company, about just how to do better at everything, how to work with people better, how to program better, how to make a game that people are going to want to pay attention to, how to make a game that's good, both design and art-wise. Like, all those things I could have helped myself with, because we really knew nothing when we were starting out. You know, as we said before, you always could make things go faster. There was definitely a time, so my first game company like failed, and then I went off and did a bunch of random